Hi everyone, my name is Dandan Liu and I'm a PhD student at Harbin Institute of Technology. In this talk, I'd like to briefly introduce our paper, G-Core Exploring Cross-Layer Cohesiveness in Multilayer Graphs, which is a joint work with Professor Zhou Zhou. Let me start with the background and motivation. Cohesive subgraph mining aims at finding densely connected areas in a graph. It has widespread applications in biology analysis, community discovery, recommendations, and even graph visualization. Real-world relationships often originate from different sources, like diverse social relationships and multiple facets of genomic interactions. By representing these relationships using layers in a multilayer graph, we can obtain a more accurate picture of intricate real-world connections. Mining cohesive subgraphs from multilayer graphs uncovers more robust and reliable knowledge. Let me give you an example. Here's a three-layer academic network. We can identify a group of closely collaborated authors in Q who have jointly written papers with high similarity in C1, and their papers in C2 cite each other. This information suggests shared research interests among the authors and a stronger collaboration. Previous research has studied cohesive subgraph mining on multiplex networks, which are special multilayer graphs with shared vertices across layers, and cross-layer edges linking copies of the same vertex. We've seen both quasi-clique-based and K-core-based cohesive subgraph models. However, they only work with the one-to-one cross-layer vertex mappings. Another line of research has explored heterogeneous information networks, which captures relationships between different types of entities. Cohesive subgraph models for such networks typically rely on predefined metapaths or relational constraints. However, they face challenges when dealing with the multiple homogeneous relationships, which are often the most direct and informative. Moreover, providing meaningful constraints can be difficult. Given these limitations, there's currently a lack of cohesive subgraph models and algorithms that can effectively handle situations with both homogeneous and heterogeneous relationships, as seen in our example graph. To address this, we study a more general graph model, which accommodates different vertex types and, most importantly, allows for many-to-many cross-layer mappings. Then we devise new models and algorithms tailored to this general multilayer graph. Now, let me introduce our G-core model. To ensure reliable cohesive subgraphs, vertices are expected to show cohesiveness in each layer. To mirror this, we employ the simple yet effective K-core model. For example, both authors in Q and papers in C form a two-core, with each vertex having a degree of at least 2. Now, here's a challenge. How to measure the cohesiveness of the authors in Q in terms of the paper similarity layer based on this dense paper group C? A straightforward idea is that if C covers small papers of these authors, its cohesiveness can better reflect that of the authors. So, we propose using neighbor coverage fraction of an author, defined as a proportion of its cross-layer neighbors falling in C. For example, the author A4 connects 2 papers with one belonging to C, so it has a fraction value of 1/2. In practice, we require each author to have a sufficiently large fraction value to ensure their engagement. Let me explain our G-core model using this example graph. Suppose the author layer G3 is our focus. Given an integer vector k and a real vector p, a G-core on the author layer is defined as a subset Q of authors, satisfying 3 conditions. Firstly, it itself forms a K3 core. Secondly, for each other paper layer GI, there's a dense KI core comprised of Q's published papers that ensures a high neighbor coverage fraction, at least a PI, for each author in Q. And lastly, Q is maximal. We observe a uniqueness property for G-cores for given vectors K and P, and we call it the KP core. Regarding our G-core model, we studied 3 critical problems on general multilayer graphs. The first is G-core search, also called GCS, which computes the G-core for given vectors K and P. It is crucial for retrieving cohesive subgraphs with particular features. The second problem is G-core decomposition, or GCD, which identifies non-empty G-cores for different KP pairs, providing insights into the structure of the graph. And the third problem is G-core indexing, or GCI, which aims to devise a compact index for all G-cores to support fast online GCS. Now, let's shift the focus to the solution for the G-core search problem. We adopt the vertex pitting paradigm to solve it, which iteratively removes vertices unsatisfying the definition of G-core. Here's an illustration. Suppose G3 is of our interest, and we have vectors k and p. Initially, all vertices in G3 are considered qualified and form the set Q. We first check if Q forms a 3-core and remove vertices with degree less than 3. Here, vertex 0 is removed. Moving forward, we check whether vertices in Q have sufficient neighbor coverage fractions on G1 and G2. For G1, we compute the cross-layer neighbors of Q, extract the 3-core from it. By examining the vertices' neighbor coverage fraction within the 3-core, we notice that vertices 9 and 10 fail to meet the threshold specified by P, so they are removed from Q. Then for G2, we compute the remaining vertices' cross-layer neighbors, derive the 3-core, and check the neighbor coverage fractions. This time, 4 vertices are removed. Now, Q is updated to Q1, and we apply the same checking process to it. Fortunately, it meets all requirements and forms the target KP core. The entire process run in polynomial time in the size of the graph. Let's move on to the G-core decomposition problem. The naive approach following an enumerating and computing framework is highly inefficient due to unnecessary computations. To solve it efficiently, we introduce KP tree, which organizes all possible KP pairs in a tree of trees structure. In the KP tree, each node represents a value for vector k, termed a k-node, and holds p vectors for all possible KP pairs sharing the same k. But how to enumerate values for the real vector p? We use a finite set F of real vectors derived from the Cartesian product of L-1 sets as a practical range for p. This set F ensures a vector yielding the same G-core for any KP core. To represent p-values in an integer form, we sort each set Fi and store the indices of the fractional values. Then, within each k-node, we attach a p-tree structure to organize these integer values, with each p-node representing a p-value and uniquely signifying the KP core. Using the KP tree, we employ a DFS order decomposition approach that performs DFS traversals on the KP tree and the P tree in each encountered k-node. When a p-node is visited, our GCS algorithm computes the corresponding KP core. But why is this order efficient? Let me show you two containment relationships among G-cores. When fixing vector k, larger values of p lead to smaller G-cores, nesting inside the G-core for smaller p-values. And a similar containment relationship applies for G-cores with the same vector p. Let's revisit the KP tree. There's an order between vectors associated with the P tree nodes. That is, the vector for any node is larger than its parent's vector. Combining with the containment hierarchy, we can safely compute child G-cores from parent G-cores without examining the entire graph. It can dramatically reduce redundant computations. If the parent core is empty, all its descendant cores are also empty, and the exploration can be terminated early. There are also other relationships between vectors for k-nodes that can be utilized to enhance efficiency. However, we won't go into the details here. Let's further explore the G-core indexing problem. The DFS-based GCD approach will conceptually generate a subtree of KP tree, with each p-node representing an empty G-core. Materializing the subtree derives the storage and the index structure. For quick access, we use a hash table to map each k vector to the address of their p trees. Then, augmentations are made to each p tree. Taking this one, for example, we add a dummy child node representing an empty G-core to each leaf, and then attach the differences between adjacent G-cores to the connecting edge. This allows for faster retrieval of any G-core by following the tree path and making a union of the vertex sets along the path. With the KP tree index, we can retrieve any KP core by locating the P tree of the K node in the hash table, searching for the P node, and retrieving the G core using store differences. This index-based GCS method is quite efficient, running in linear time in the tree height and G core size. While the KP tree brings efficiency, it may contain redundant nodes leading to wasted space. We've identified 3 types of redundancy in the P tree. The first type involves nodes representing the same G core with a single child. It can be reduced by a simple node removal process. The second type occurs when structurally identical regions exist in 2 adjacent subtrees. Regarding this, a similar removal process can be applied to the redundant region. The third type involves 2 structurally identical subtrees within distinct branches. We deal with this by merging the redundant subtree into its companion. Our compaction schemes will finally result in a succinct deck-shaped structure, and most importantly, the index-based GCS approach can still work on it. I'll next show some key experimental results. To demonstrate the effectiveness of our G-core model, we conduct a case study on a 2-layer graph DBLP. Focusing on the author layer, we extract connected components of the tone core and the KP core, partially shown in this figure. The table reports their sizes and their shared research interests among the authors for each connected component. Observing the results, the tone core reveals a sizable group of over 500 authors with broad research interests in data management and database system. While the 7 smaller KP core components highlight more focused author groups, such as group number 4, specializing in database storage management, and could serve as excellent candidates for hosting tutorials on this topic. These findings validate the G-core's ability to uncover fine-grained knowledge. Regarding the efficiency of our proposed algorithms, we first compared the 2 G-core search approaches, the peeling-based GCS and the index-based GCS+. We here present the results on 7 general multilayer graphs. It can be observed that, using the KP tree index, GCS+ outperforms GCS by up to 1 to 4 orders of magnitude. Turning to the efficiency of handling the GC and the GCI problems, we compare tree GCD, which runs the DFS-based G-core decomposition along with KP tree index construction, and the tree GCD-C, which additionally employs P-tree compactions. These 2 figures present runtime and scale of the generated KP tree. Obviously, combining the compaction consistently yields the smallest KP tree, while achieving the shortest runtime. Now, let me briefly conclude our work. We propose a novel G-core model for general multilayer graphs. It offers an unconstrained exploration of both homogeneous and heterogeneous entity relationships. An efficient polynomial time peeling approach is proposed to solve the G-core search problem. A KP tree structure is introduced to facilitate G-core decomposition and serve as a compact index for all G-cores. It enables a fast online GCS method, which significantly outperforms the peeling-based approach. Moreover, a series of P-tree compaction techniques are proposed to reduce redundancy within the KP tree, while also improving its construction efficiency. That's all the content I want to share with you in this talk. Thanks for watching.